Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new League of Legends video. So it's that time once again to talk about the biggest changes coming into patch 7.5. There are definitely going to be quite a bit of changes, most of them being nerfs, but also definitely some buffs as well that I think everyone should definitely know about going into the next patch. So as usual, the purpose of this video is to get you ready to go, so the second the patch hits the live servers, you know exactly what to expect and nothing hopefully will surprise you. So as usual, if you end up enjoying this video and finding it useful and you still want me to continue doing this for every single new patch, simply let me know by hitting the like button. But with all that being said and done, let's not waste any more time and get right into the first big change coming for patch 7.5. So I first want to talk about two nerfs happening to a summoner spell and also to a keystone. The first of which being Exhaust. Now Exhaust, in my honest opinion, other than of course Flash, is probably the most broken summoner spell you can take. It has so many uses, it is almost unmatched by any other summoner spell late game and team fights, and it's just simply one of the best to take. But it seems like enough is finally enough, as Exhaust is going to be getting a nerf. Now whenever you exhaust an enemy champion, it will reduce their movement speed by 30% and their damage dealt by 40% for 2.5 seconds. No longer will it reduce their attack speed by 30%, and no longer will it also reduce their armor and MR by 10. So it's still got its core components, you still slow them down, you still reduce the damage, which is what you really want Exhaust for. But the attack speed thing is gone because, well, honestly, it always was a very anti-fun thing to face. Because whenever you get exhausted and you get that attack speed reduction, you can easily cancel auto attacks. It's extremely not fun to face and deal with, and it just didn't really do a whole lot. Just having the damage reduction there and the movement speed reduction as well is more than enough, and I think Exhaust will finally be in a pretty damn good spot and not be considered overpowered. But following Exhaust being nerfed, Deathfire Touch, a very popular keystone at the very moment, especially for champions like Jhin and Varus, the bonus AD scaling on this has been lowered from 60% to 45%, pretty much because of the reason I just said, Jhin, Varus. Two of the best ADCs at the moment by far, and even Misfortune's Support or ADC also using Deathfire Touch and also being considered one of the top tier ADCs. This will obviously bring them down a few levels, won't make them as insanely strong and scale as insanely well with the Deathfire Touch, but it's still probably the best keystone. Maybe Fervor of Battle will be better on champions like Varus and stuff now, but Deathfire Touch will still most likely be the keystone of choice for someone like Jhin. Now following this, we have another huge change happening to Warlord's Bloodlust. Now I talked about this in my previous video analyzing these big reworks for the keystones, but I'll quickly mention it once again. So the concept of Warlord's Bloodlust is still somewhat similar, where it still gives you lifesteal and things like that, but the way it works now is completely different. It now works on a charging system very similar to something like Static Shiv or Rapid Fire Cannon, where, doing actions and moving around will grant you charges up to 100, and at 100 you can deplete the charges to gain bonus effects. And the bonus effects are as follows. It'll give you up to 50% lifesteal and grant 30% movement speed for 0.75 seconds. All in all, a pretty damn interesting change. Hopefully it'll make Warlord's Bloodlust not as useful as it currently is, because right now, it's useful in the laning phase, it's useful throughout the whole game, and this is why a lot of ADCs take it, because it's just always there and it's always helping you whether you're attacking champions or attacking minions. This will make it a bit more situational, but when it does proc, especially late on into the game, I feel like it can have some pretty damn good uses. But following this, Bond of Stone, yet another keystone, has also got reworked to the point where the name even changed. Now it is called Stoneborn Pact. Its new effects are as follows. First of all, it just flat out gives you 5% total health. Okay, why not? I guess that's pretty cool. But the other effect, the main one, is your movement impairing effects brand enemy champions with an Earthen Rune for 4 seconds. Other allied champions who attack branded enemies heal for 5 plus 2.5% of your maximum health over 2 seconds, but unfortunately it's halved if you are ranged. So I already talked about how this brings kind of a whole new aspect to this Stormborn Pact or Bond of Stone keystone, because at the moment there's really no reason to take it. The other two options are just flat out better and accomplish almost very similar things. But this will not only work on every kind of CC, whether it's a slow, a blind, a grounded, a stun, a root, but apparently it has no cooldown limit, so you can spam this on several champions and it can consistently keep proccing over and over and over. So this is going to be most likely the keystone of choice for support champions nowadays, especially ones with a lot of CC. But I feel like depending on the team comp, some supports, maybe like Leona, maybe like Braum, maybe like Alistair, will still take Curse of the Colossus. But let's move on to the next big change, one of the biggest ones this patch without question, the Aatrox rework. Now this isn't a full scope rework, but it's enough to call it a rework because he's definitely getting changed quite significantly. I did talk about this in my other video as well, but I'll very briefly touch on it at the very moment. His passive Q, W, and E all got changed. His passive now has a lower CD for the revive. It offers AD when the passive is maxed out, which you now max out by simply using your other abilities, very similar to how it currently works. But when it is maxed out, you'll instantly get a bonus effect called Blood Rush, Rush, which gives you 25% base attack damage, 20 to 50% attack speed, and of course, upon taking fatal damage, you'll revive over 3 seconds, which is kind of still keeping Aatrox at his core. Following this, Aatrox's Q and W no longer use any HP to actually cast the ability, while each of them also fill up his blood well by 20% for every time an ability is cast, so for his Q and E ability, or whenever it procs, so for his W that grants him bonus damage every few auto attacks. His Q ability had the base damage heavily lowered, but it now scales on total AD, which for the most part means that chances are you'll be doing actually more damage with the Q overall. His W now will no longer give you that triple heal under 50% HP, but now it has more of a base heal and it scales on missing HP, while the damage portion of his W is just flat out lower. And his E ability now will actually make you have to use 30 HP rather than 5% to actually cast it, but it'll still give you that 20% of the blood well upon cast. It also now has better flat damage scaling per level and higher bonus AD ratio scaling as well, but it unfortunately has completely lost its AP scaling, which is completely fine and a very worthy trade-off. So Aatrox is going to be just flat out a full AD type champion, now losing pretty much all AP scaling other than I believe still his ultimate. But this is going to be a champion you might have to start watching out for, as people are definitely going to be playing him more frequently, trying him out, seeing how strong he is, seeing how OP he could potentially be, or maybe he'll take the Cho'Gath route and instead be completely shit regardless. Next up, there's some buffs and nerfs happening to Fizz. First, the 2 buffs. His Q ability has just flat out got its AP ratio increased by 20%, while his W's bleed duration has been lowered from 4 seconds to 3, and the mark duration has been increased from 4 seconds to 6. So this means for his W, well, the bleed damage is gonna happen just 1 more second faster, which is always a good thing because that means the damage is gonna just be much quicker. So that's all in all a pretty damn good thing, especially for his Q. But his ultimate, this has kind of been a very big issue with Fizz for a long time, where you would miss it, but it would have this huge AoE in the ground where you can easily walk around it, but it'll still somehow find a way to attach on you, and it would just be extremely obnoxious and annoying to face. Well, now they finally seem to have fixed this, so it attaching to you in such stupid ways will no longer happen, and it should just simply work much better as an ultimate and not have these weird gimmicky things. But following this, we also have some buffs happening to Kindred. Now, Kindred's passive, where it kind of has the mark system going along, you know, with the jungle monsters, the scuttle crab and all that stuff, it's been changed to kind of a better system. I talked about this as well in my previous video, but I'll quickly mention it again. The TLDR is essentially, there's tiers of levels of how it decides to mark and what it decides to mark throughout the jungle. Currently on the live servers, from having 0 to 2 marks, it can potentially either mark the crab or the enemy raptors, but now your first mark will always be a crab. It is much safer, won't force you to go in the enemy jungle to get that first mark, which again, the raptors are pretty damn hard to kill nowadays, and it's just a better trade-off overall. Essentially, again, TLDR, the passive marks are going to be a lot more forgiving. They're not going to try to put you in bad situations early on into the game and make you have to go very deep into the jungle just to maybe hopefully get the mark and try to get the snowball going. The next big change is going to be a pretty damn big nerf happening to LeBlanc. So everyone that hates facing the champion, well, you can rejoice because the changes, if they go through, which they most likely will at this point, are going to be quite bad. So first, the only good thing about the changes. Her Q ability will do double damage now to minions only, so I guess clearing the waves will be slightly easier. But to compensate for this and just to make her overall weaker, and this is again a very, very big nerf, Distortion, her W, the damage has been less than half. Literally less than half. Currently, rank 5, 225 base damage plus 60 AP. The new one, rank 5, 100 base damage, 20% AP. So maxing out her W first might just simply not be the best option anymore, but regardless, I mean, you probably want to max Q, then E now, and then just, I guess, max W last, but then you'll lose the CDR, you'll lose the mobility, and it's gonna kind of suck. Because on top of this, her Mimic Distortion, if you press R then W, has also had its damage lowered, not by half, but not necessarily too far from it as well. So again, I don't know, not really sure what they're doing or trying to do or accomplish with these LeBlanc nerfs. I mean, I guess they're trying to force you to not max W first and potentially even max the last, but why is the question? Why not just make it slightly less, you know, weaker? Why not make it just do less damage? So not sure if I agree with these changes, but very curious to see how it's going to play out once it hits the live servers. Next up, we have some buffs finally happening to Lucian, somewhat of a forgotten ADC. Not the biggest buffs in the world, but they're pretty cool as well. Essentially, the cast time on his Q ability has been increased as you level up the Q. It'll start off a bit slower than currently, but by rank 5, it'll be actually a decent amount faster. The same thing with his W, and it just makes Lucian kind of more fluid to play and just makes him feel a little bit better overall. So pretty cool buffs, definitely welcoming, and I'm actually really curious to see how much of a difference it will make and how much smoother it'll make the champion feel, because the champion, how it feels and how smooth it plays out is actually very, very important in the success and just how well you can play them. But there's still a few more things happening to ADCs. Next up we have Misfortune. Her Q ability, Double Up, known to just completely annihilate your HP bar in the laning phase and honestly throughout the game, has had its effect somewhat changed. Whenever you Q a target and it kills them, the second shot will no longer do 50% increased damage. So with that being said, the second shot now just does the same damage as the first shot. But to kind of compensate, the second shot can potentially critically strike at random times for, of course, normal critical strike damage, 200% base. And it always will critically strike if the first shot kills its target. So all in all, her Q ability will deal less damage in the laning phase for the majority of the time, but I mean, they're going to start spamming Qs much more frequently. They're going to be trying to get those crits off as often as possible, and later on into the game, if they finally do hit a crit, that thing is gonna do a lot of damage. In my opinion, all in all, probably a slight nerf, but honestly not the biggest one either. But then we also have some nerfs happening to Varus, arguably the best ADC at the very moment, and this one's gonna be happening to his most obnoxious tool in his kit, his Q. Its cooldown has been increased by 4 seconds at every single rank. The total AD ratio on the maximum damage of the Q has been lowered by 15%. Not the biggest changes, but you know, it's still a little bit something. But his Q has a new effect where if it hits a champion that has your W passive on them, it'll actually reduce the current cooldown of your Q by 4 seconds, essentially putting it back down to what it currently is in the live servers. So all this is doing is just lowering the potential that Varus has, just chilling half the screen away, just spamming Qs at you left and right. His siege potential will go down for sure, but for some reason I don't feel like it's enough of a nerf, and I still feel like he'll be more or less the same. Next up, we have some very quick nerfs happening to Rengar. His base armor has been lowered to 22, so his first clears should be a little bit more difficult, and his W, Battle Roar, the increased percent damage heal from monster attacks has been lowered by 50%, again lowering his clear in the jungle, making him not as efficient or not as strong and not come out as healthy. So this will slow his overall early game pressure a little bit, but I'm not personally entirely sure by how much or how much this will actually affect him negatively, but of course, regardless, it is still a nerf. Now the second last thing to talk about is the rework happening to Blade of the Ruined King. It seems like it's finally going to be going live this patch. So the changes are as follows. It will now cost you 100 gold less. You'll be gaining 15 extra AD, but losing 15% attack speed. But you'll now have 15% life, so rather than 10, the on-hit minimum damage has been increased to 15 from 10 as well. The active portion of the actual Blade of the Ruined King damage has been changed from dealing 10% of the target's maximum health as physical to just flat out 100 magical damage, which makes it sort of better as a rush item, which is going to be very interesting. Maybe on Zed even, that could be pretty good. Unfortunately, the active self-heal has been completely removed. The active's movement speed steal has been increased actually from 20 to 25%, and they also increased the duration I use stealing the speed from 2 to 3 seconds, but apparently lost the effect of basic attacks extend the duration of the theft by 1 second up to a maximum duration of 4 seconds, which I never even knew existed actually. All in all, definitely a pretty cool change to Blade of the Ruined King. I actually kind of like it now as opposed to what they did way before. This is going to make it rushing as a first item much more kind of interesting and much more forgiving, and I'm going to be really curious to see how effective this might be on Zed as a first or second item, so definitely look forward to that. But now last but not least, Edge of Night. So it's had a hotfix happen on the live servers where the AD has been lowered and the unique active cooldown has been increased, which is again already on the live servers as they put it kind of randomly in the middle of the patch. But there's still another nerf coming, which is going to be the unique active duration has been lowered from 10 seconds to 5 seconds. So essentially the bubble you get around you that protects you from a spell will now only last 5 seconds rather than 10. And honestly, this is definitely a much needed nerf because Edge of Night is completely busted. But regardless guys, that is about it for this video. A whole bunch of information. So if you enjoyed it, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, share this video with your friends, and hope to see you for the next one as well. Thank you for watching. Peace.